Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/new music industry. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
You're listening to the New Music Industry with David Andrew Weeb.
Today I'm chatting with musician Brian Bob Young. How are you today, Brian?
Great, David Andrew Weeb. It is thank you so much for having me on, man. It is actually a really cool experience to have a working relationship with you and, hear my music be a part of a show that I genuinely enjoy and then be able to talk about it with you too is pretty cool. So thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And I guess my listeners have now been hearing your music for probably a few months at this point, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
I've been using it for many episodes, and of course your name is mentioned at the end of every episode. So we should maybe get a sense of who you are and then recount how it is that you came to do some of this music.
Yeah. So, just like most of the people that have been on this show, I've loved music and engaged with it my whole life, right? So that's kind of the given for most of us in this field, right? But I guess, I don't want to be too tangential on like a life story of how I ended up on the production side of things. So I'll just be specific with how I was able to work with you was that I made goals about a year and a half ago of what kind of work would I want on the production side and what projects could I do that would help me to get there that would also be meaningful projects. And that happened by actually a kind of like lightning bolt moment where I was, working a bunch of jobs and I came across a buddy of mine that I didn't even know he was a film producer, and he knew that I was starting to reel on the production side and more of the creativity side of the music stuff, which we'll put a pin in that I worked on the business side for a long time before doing this. And he had a film script and was like, "Hey, do you think you could try your hand on scoring this independent film?" And in the heat of the moment, I was so excited because I love this guy, and he's worked on some of my favorite movies. Actually, he worked on the movie. He was a part of Whiplash, and that kind of fell through a little bit for him. But so I just know that he had worked on projects that I would be really excited about. But at the time, I was not equipped at all to execute doing a film score. I had no idea what would go into that, neither the resources nor the skill to execute, right? So I learned that pretty quickly and talked to him about it. And he said, "Dude, that's fine." But it really got the wheels in motion of like, okay, if another like script or something ends up in my lap, I want to be prepared, because you've heard the quote, luck is where preparation and opportunity meet, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what got the wheels in motion. And something that one of the first ideas I had was like, why not try to help out podcasts that I like, and see if they want their music updated or a little bit more catered to the show and all that. And your show, of course, is one of the shows that I enjoy, and reached out to see if, you wanted some updated music that kind of had its own little different sound, right? So that is a little bit of the story of how I specifically ended up on doing the production for your show.
That's great. I like what you said about specificity, which is something that Matt Starr was very adamant on when he came on this show and talked about that too. So being really intentional and clear about your goals.
And that's so hard for me, man. Like I've had like it is drudgery for me to be specific and not be idealistic in my head in the clouds. Yeah. It is hard for me, but when I do it, obviously it's fruitful. There's something there. So,
hey, I'm in the same boat for sure. And the thing that I kept talking about this year and continue to talk about this year is publishing 10 to 12 books. And I think I'm set up fairly well to do that. And even if I don't reach that goal, if I end up with 5 or 8 books, I think I can still say, okay, so if I want to do 10 the following year, I can at least make that adjustment. And
two things that, not to go on tangents with it, but I know listening to your show that you're like a voracious reader. You read a book a week last year. Is that true?
I did that in 2015 and 2016. Yeah.
That's insane. Like, I love to read too, but like, I just got done this book called Educated by Tara Westover. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
It's a memoir of her gnarly story of growing up in an oppressive Mormon household off the grid, and how she ended up studying at Cambridge and educating herself and becoming this wonderful speaker and author. So I tore through that book in like a week, but I'm reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F right now, and I've been on that a month, which is like half the size. So I if I'm passionate about it, I can get through it. But if not, I'm going to take my time. So, but I know that you were doing that because it's kind of like the CEO thing, right? Of like CEOs read a book a week, and now they're like awesome.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. I was inspired by that for sure. But another thing that happened was, I want to say it's AAA accountants. It actually might be AA accountants. I'm gonna look that up real quick. But it was Shaz Nawaz, and Shazad Nawaz is the managing director. It's AA accountants. And I interviewed him once. It was for a different podcast, and I was doing pre-interviews to kind of get the guests' answers and coax out cool tidbits from them before they actually went on the show and did the real interview.
Gotcha.
But he sat there, some people you create a relationship with, and he sat there and talked with me for, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 minutes after the show. And he shared I was asking him because he just seemed like really competent with marketing.
Oh, cool.
And then he told me, oh, well, the reason I know how to do this is because I read a book a week.
I am always reading. I never stop reading.
Yeah. And he recommended me some Dan Kennedy material, which at the time I was not into, but I am actually really into it now, which is funny.
Right. I assume you've read like the Seth Godin stuff and all that. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. That's like, if you haven't, it's like, get out of entrepreneurship. It's like the Bible of entrepreneurs. But anyways, that's it. That's enough on reading everything. I could go off on. I love reading, but that's really cool if you're able to do that.
Yeah. And getting back to what you said too, I think for a long time I was not terribly specific, and it still can be a bad habit of mine at times. But what happened through much experience and reading and learning and growing was there were some people that were just not worth working with, and you begin to learn that through experience, kind of the warning signs of, is this going to work out, or is this really going to be just a total disaster that they're going to be constantly calling me, which I don't accept calls from clients to begin with, except on a completely scheduled basis.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to be a huge bother, and that's just going to suck up my time, and I'm not going to make any money on that.
Yeah. Well, I hear you on the specificity can be kind of like probably like an umbrella to our entire conversation, because we wanted to talk about networking and some of the music production creativity side. All of it has been slowly learning how to be focused for me, because I am naturally just not a focused individual. And whenever I would read or experience any sort of opportunity, I would realize that it's because people were able to focus and achieve what they wanted to achieve, and just sit down, put their head down and work hard, but also be really passionate about it. So maybe that can kind of transition a little bit into the networking side, because I feel like that's been my experience with networking, is because I've achieved at least some level of being focused there, and not just like walking around Nashville trying to run into a bigwig.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I noticed is when you talked to me, it wasn't like you were talking to a complete stranger, like you didn't know anything about me. You were actually asking very specific questions. And I find that's something that people don't do well. And I'll probably go off on a rant about non-sequiturs in a moment. But that was one of the things you did very, very well.
Very cool. And I think that the only reason that I have been able to get like some consistent work on the production side, and definitely I've been really focusing hard on my original music too, and playing shows and doing all that, is because of doing some fairly simple research. Like, I listened to your show and I was like, man, this guy has a wealth of information. And then I realized, like, oh, he's talking on the new music industry, and maybe I could make some really cool creative music for it to, make the show even that much better. So that's where, right, it's a mutually beneficial working relationship. So when I reached out to you, it wasn't just like, hey man, let me do your music because that'd be cool and I'd get money.
Exactly. That's a big deal.
This is very specific, and you have a very specific vision, and it's and if I don't mind saying so, like, it's a noble one, giving so much information to people that are trying to work in a field that is so complex and so heavy and draining or discouraging at times. You just need to have the right information to navigate it, and you do that. So I'm very proud to be able to be a part of such a show, man. Not to be too aggrandizing or anything.
No, thank you. I think you're right. Like, I am pretty transparent, so you wouldn't have to spend hours researching me, who I am or what I do, to kind of come up with that. At the same time, you took the time to do it, which I know many people don't. So that's a really good teaching point there.
Cool.
Yeah. So I kind of hinted at the whole non sequitur nature of some of the networking that happens these days, and the reason that I have trouble with it, I think, is because there's no established context. So in other words, people will come to me and suddenly go, hey, you're doing this wrong with your business. Sort of like they were Ty Lopez or somebody like that.
Okay.
Who is the perfect example of the non sequitur. You watch his videos on YouTube and it's just like, I just made $10 million last week. Or he doesn't even talk about that. He talks, I just read 52 books in a day.
Right.
Like,
yep.
That was kind of his thing for a while.
Uh-huh.
And I just thought, like, okay, A, I don't know who you are. B, you established no context before jumping into this conversation, which I understand why in the advertising world you don't want to spend too much time, like, introducing who you are and stuff like that.
Right.
But I've had investors and people like that come to me without same thing, right? Without any context, without establishing a rapport, not even saying hello, David, right?
Yeah, and I think some people, we know these kind of people that are the dominant types that just, they're steamrolling and they're in it to win it. And I guess it works for them, but I don't know if there's a lot of like joy and substance with it too. I assume there's like a trail of tears behind it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just my assumption, but that's also because I'm biased and that's not how I naturally operate. And in fact, it's worked for me to create that context, right? And I do have, I think myself, a pretty good story to share with how I got my first job in a studio in Nashville due to creating context, I guess, if you will. So I like maybe in Nashville for 6 months. I'm originally from Philadelphia, and my first career path actually out of college was to become a music therapist, and that didn't work. I burned out. So we just did a fresh start in Nashville. My wife got a job as a nurse, and I was job hunting. And about 6 months in, I was in a steam room at a YMCA, and there was one older gentleman there. And in a steam room, I'm usually like head down, but I wanted to talk to somebody. So I was like, hey, I'm Brian. Like, how's it going today, sir? We get to talking for like 20 minutes, and long story short, he has been the CEO of a company called Red Ridge Entertainment here in Nashville since like the early 90s. And he gave me an internship at the studio just to kind of shadow and see if there's anything I could do that fit, which being a session musician was definitely out. As a sidebar, so humbling to be around these musicians. So humbling. But I realized that there was very quickly a need for rebranding. The company's website had been around since like the early 2000s. So it was just like a total hodgepodge, total mess. And it just needed to be updated for the 21st century. And they were getting a steady flow of clients, but my kind of pitch was like, if we can rebrand this company, you might be able to like really expand the network. So that turned into a 2-year job with that company in rebranding and bringing in people to do that. And then I also functioned as pretty much an A&R guy. And by A&R, I mean like not the classic sense of like Tom Petty's A&R that's like, very much so a part of like choosing what single they put out, right? I'm talking about the like kind of half-assed A&R of more of like a talent scout.
Yeah.
So, but not half-assed in that I was half-assing the job. I was just finding people online to see if they wanted to do professional recordings of their music and do music videos. So all that to say, though, that whole experience, which was an adrenaline shot of knowledge about the music industry, came from talking to a dude in a steam room. I wasn't sitting there trying to say like, oh, maybe this guy is like, a bigwig around here and I can get him in. I just wanted to have a conversation. And although I ended up leaving that company, we still have a great relationship. The head guy still calls me just to see how I'm doing. And that is so important, right? I'm sure you've experienced that where you don't burn bridges and you're able to continue to have healthy working relationships because it was built on the foundation in the context of a relationship and as opposed to just trying to work up some ladder and capitalize off people, right? So, yeah, that was my networking. I guess my best networking anecdote. I have a few others of just like my philosophy of it, for sure. But but that's probably a pretty good story for it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great. I think what came to mind for me was playing in this one band. It was a Def Leppard tribute band, and I've mentioned that before, and I'm still with them. There was just a period when I had kind of a sense of graduation goggles. In other words, not like I'm too good for this, just like I'm kind of done with this. I think I'm ready to move on. And I did for a couple of years, but I never, I didn't burn any relationships. It was just kind of like, hey, this will be my last gig for a while. And when I came back, you know what? It was just the perfect timing based on the need for another player as well as the economy for us to start getting out there and playing in bars. Now, like, I don't totally believe in this whole concept of economy. It's mostly based on the confidence of the people involved in that side of things. But yeah, it was great. Like we would play.
I love how that story is like so not dramatic. Like all the things that are portrayed on like rock and roll stories and videos are like the band is literally like kicking the crap out of each other on stage and like just total debauchery, and it's like ends and it's just so much drama. And for you, it was like, yeah, we're moving on and we're all very professional. Like that's actually the normal story.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, for the most part. What did end in a not so good note was my band Angels Breaking Silence, which went on for about 1.5 years, which is, in retrospect, predictable. There was no project with those specific people that went on any longer than that. There was a band before that was Lightly Toasted Touche, which was the same.
What was the name?
Lightly Toasted Touche. There's some music on my YouTube channel. Yeah, it's the weirdest name ever, but
no, I love it.
Yeah. So
I and to that drama point, to like put my foot in my own mouth, in high school, I played in a lot of different bands, and there was so much drama. It's like just like thinking back to the high school into college days, like you're just so. I mean, I'm an emotional guy to begin with, but especially in high school, everybody is so touchy and emotional, and going into college, it's still the same. And pretty much like all my band stories, there's some sort of like extreme drama looking back. So I might take it back a little bit, but once you become like an adult, like that stuff subsides a little bit, I think. I hope.
Oh yeah. That's a part of it. And I've been going through a series of seminars where we learned that drama is always a creation of our own, and trying that on. But when you do accept it as being your reality, you begin to see, oh yeah, I guess there's no need for it.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, to bring it back to like, if you are working with people that have a specific vision too, like you're going to be focused, right? So I think, something for me that is kind of an anecdote to speak to that was how I got this live gig on Friday in Atlanta. So, and the show's not a big deal itself, but I'm really excited for the location and the artist that I'm opening up for. So this can speak to kind of the networking side, right? I didn't even really look at how I went about this as networking, but it was. So I think I genuinely believe networking is the outcome of what you want to achieve. So for me, I'm reverse engineering right now for my goals with what I want to do with music production projects and my original music over the next 5 years. So the people I reach out to and the people I interact with, if I'm talking about a collaborating thing, then it's under that umbrella of the goals that I have, right? So if I'm just like walking around Nashville hoping to bump into somebody and say like, look how awesome I am, like that's just naive for lack of a better word, but it's probably not going to produce any work. But if I'm intentionally going to gigs that I love and respect and learning from other artists that I love and respect, and then I have what I have to offer, who knows what can come of that. And I've definitely had some really neat experiences. So back to the Atlanta gig, what I did was I researched some small venues that really support independent artists. And then I researched who was performing there, who has performed there over the last year. And then I listened to dozens of artists' music, and I found a few that I really liked. And I reached out to those artists and asked them if they'd like an opener or how they booked at that said venue. And that's how I'm opening for this wonderful artist I can't wait to meet on Friday named James of Mosaics. He's based out of Atlanta, and he's like a folksy, jazzy, avant-garde artist. That's a genre, right? A folksy, jazzy, avant-garde. And I think my music will sit in quite nice to open up the night. But again, if I were just to network to try to find someone who's like cool and has some sort of that definitely wouldn't have happened. I literally have no idea how this dude is doing other than his music is friggin' awesome and he plays out regularly and he seems weird. So that means he's probably human and I'll probably enjoy his company. So, so that is maybe my most recent example of, I guess that is really essentially networking, but I really wasn't looking at it like that. I was just looking at consistent gigs and play with good people,
That's always a good starting point, is just to go after what you think is interesting. I recall that I met a local musician years ago when I was just getting started as kind of a solo artist, so probably somewhere in the 2003 to 2005 time frame, and just happened to be at one of the venues that I regularly played at, and the singer from there called me up because he worked at the cafe and said, hey, you should come check out this guy on Friday night or Saturday night or whatever it was. And so one time I finally did see him, and he was coming through that venue regularly, and I met him there then and there, but he doesn't remember. And fast forward a few years, he owned another different cafe in Calgary, and he was running a weekly open mic that everybody kind of swore by. And so I went to check that out, and I hung out there, and of course he looked familiar to me. I think he still thinks that's where we first met versus the many years before that. But
right. Well, speaking of, for the networking thing, I definitely believe open mics are still really great.
Yeah, right.
And it's a little different here in Nashville. There is a bit of and I don't mean to say this in any sort of cynical way per se, but there's a bit of a machine here, right? So the way that it operates is a little different. Have you ever been to Nashville? I know you're in Canada, but
I haven't. But I've heard a little bit about the open mics. That first of all, they can be a little bit
it's
hard.
A totally different piece. So, all right. So when I was working with this studio, and young people would come in with kind of stars in their eyes, I guess, right?
Yeah.
One thing I would say is like, it's great to be passionate about this, but don't go to an open mic and expect like a record deal because you played your song. Like, go there and enjoy and work up your chops playing live and meet a few people, but try not to think of it any more than what it is. And I don't say this story on my end to boast. It's just weird the way it happened. So I'd lived in Santa Barbara, California for the past year, and I played my first open mic in a really long time, playing my original music. And after it, a booking agent came up to me and said, dude, can you play in 2 nights for a set at this venue? And I was so shocked because I spent 2 years telling people not to expect that. Right. And I was like, let me like look at my schedule and text you. I gotta like wrap my head around this. So, so I think, the way that these like open mics or things like an open mic, songwriting rounds, they can function so differently in different places in the country or the world. Oh, yeah. And you just have to have it, again, gets back to that focus and specificity of what you want to achieve. Like, I really wanted to get my live chops going and play out as much as possible. And so my radar was up for that. And I was prepared, so yeah, I guess that's another networking thing. I would say, right?
Oh yeah. I think open mics too are just kind of great way to keep a momentum going sometimes, if you're in a busy city with no gigs, guess what, go play a few open mics and you can kind of keep your grassroots tour going, so to speak. Yeah, and even in a town with a smaller town with a few gigs, it's kind of the same thing because there's only so many venues you can go around to. So an open mic can kind of fill that space too.
No, for sure. And you know what? I probably was a bit prideful going into these first few open mics. Like, it's just an open mic and blah, blah, blah. And I feel bad about that because I met some of the greatest friends and some people that I ended up playing live with weekly at venues because I was just consistently going to open mics. And so there's like these great communities there and everything. So I'm thankful for that. My perspective has totally changed on that for sure. Mm-hmm. So one thing I did want to talk about though was I know we talked about before recording here was the actual production of the music on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, because,
yeah.
it is an important topic, and the music that you did, I know, the intro theme was inspired by the original intro theme, which was almost like a garage band funk kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. So, I remember so vividly working on this project. It was really, really fun. And I think, as a sidebar, so this is the whole point of all that time and energy of like cold emailing you, I guess, and researching you. It's because the end goal is the ideal situation where I'm producing music for meaningful content, right? So if that is not enjoyable to a person, don't do this job. Because there's so much work on the front end that goes into it. But doing that music was so much fun. And I remember, maybe this is a good opportunity to talk about kind of my perspective of work and art, right? Sure. Because in that setting, I'm sitting down and I need to treat it like work and a certain amount of time where no matter what, I'm getting this amount of stuff done and in order to meet a deadline. On the other side, I need to treat it like art. So I can't approach it like I'm going to be sitting in a proverbial cubicle. I actually, when I first sat down to work on the theme song, I was like reeling my head, like everything I'm putting down sounds so dumb and I hate this. So I went for a walk. And fortunately at the time I was living in beautiful Santa Barbara, California, where it's just like perpetually beautiful. Yeah. I went on a walk and just to like at least come up with a little melody line. And that's when I was like, just walking down the street and I was going, dun, 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 dun. And I was like, okay, let me try that on like a little synthesizer and mess around with it. And also it was like, ooh, I could expound upon what he already had because his listeners will be familiar to that. But then it'll kind of explode into this new sound, right?
Which I liked. Yeah.
Thank you. And you know what? I knew I was taking a risk too, because I think the sound of it is like jovial and over the top.
It is
right?
over the top.
Industry. And I was like, for theme songs that I love, and I think there's people like me out there that they're pretty over the top. They might be like tongue in cheek almost, Like I grew up with like Ren and Stimpy. Their theme song is like so that's what I like, but I knew it was a risk. And I think you said on the email, you're like, it's pretty over the top, but I like it. And I was prepared to give you other ideas and everything if you really hated it and stuff, but I'm glad that nailed it. And but then from there, the other stuff I just loved working on, because we were emailing with our shared love for like Prince and all that. Yeah. And I was, oh, this dude's got great taste in music. I was like, I'm just a white guy on guitar, but I at least can do like a little bit of the funk stuff. So the outro that you use,
yes,
man, when I hear that, I'm like, I'm really happy with that. Like it was so fun to make. And actually, it came from, do you remember the first one I sent that was literally twice the tempo?
Yes, and it was also pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I went like, bow, 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 but a little bow. So the idea was, okay, if he wants to use this for like transitions into advertisements or for the outro, that would be cool. But maybe the outro could be halftime of that riff that's pretty frantic and fast. Yeah. So then it just kind of created this really cool vibe of bow, 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 and a lot of room to do those kind of bluesy riffs and some little jazz incorporations, So I just had a ball doing it, it was so fun. And I'm not being overstated. It's so true. I just was like, I had a week of producing really fun music. So yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, and it definitely turned out great. The intro theme kind of has that, news show vibe, or let's say independent news show vibe, because those theme songs are always a little bit over the top, which is why I said, let's go.
Yeah. I wasn't offended at all. I knew what I was getting myself into. Like I grew up with, like local news stations and stuff that are like so ridiculous with their theme songs.
Yeah, exactly. They are.
But they're so I will never forget Channel 6 ABC News theme song though. That's the thing.
It'll stick in your head, yeah.
Yeah. Dun 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 dun. Yep, that's still it, man. It is still there. Ridiculous, but it works, Yeah.
And you had originally come to me saying, for a podcast that's in the music industry, there's so little music in it.
I knew. I was like, I feel like this is a good pitch, but I also I do not hope he's like offended that I'm like, I didn't want it to be like condescending or anything, because that could sound on email. That could sound like, where's the music, bro?
Yeah, totally. I said that's a fair point. And you know what? You just have blind spots. You do, and we were talking about music entrepreneurship. Like this is a tough sell from the very start, in a way, right? If for those who are like, oh yeah, I want to do this. I have to hustle and grind, which I don't advise. But like those kinds of people are going to come going, oh. Yeah, I can do this more efficiently. I can do this more systematically to make it all work for me. But that was a blind spot in the sense that, not only have I not included a lot of music, I haven't actually talked about the music that I enjoy. So.
Well, you do have your specific content on the show and all that. So sometimes, it's just not going to be a part of it. I totally get that. But part of this too is that came from, a typical sales perspective. Blah. It's find a need and fill a need, right?
That's right.
So, that was just kind of a simple, like, all right, there might be a need here and I might be able to fill it. Let's see what we can do,
Yeah.
But you're doing this project, though, to kind of expound on it, really put the wheels in motion for me, too, of getting some more production jobs. And I'm working on a show right now called Vitality Radio. That's like a wellness show. So that music is a ton of fun. But actually, back in November and December, so not too long after I finished your project, I worked on what has been one of the most profound experiences for me, a show that's essentially about Holocaust survivors. And I got the gig through a friend of mine that she's a producer in LA, of mainly a producer with podcast shows and everything. And it was really heavy, but it was definitely such a profound learning experience, both on a life side and on a work side. And that's why this business, I guess, can be so rewarding. So for a month and a half, I was reading like Holocaust survivor stories. I was reading all the research that they did for the show, and really had my head in the emotion and the philosophies that came out of this in unimaginable time in human history, right? Mm-hmm. And they wanted music that was kind of like explosions in the sky stuff. So that really kind of droning but beautiful and heavy music. And I thought that was very smart of them, that kind of sound could be perfectly matched up with the content of the show that was so heavy. So I got to complete that project right before the new year, and I'm excited for it to come out, because I produced like 5 songs for it, and I think they're gonna use at least like 3 or 4. So yeah, they kind of range from having explosions in the sky type sound to being just very light instrumentation in the background to fill in space. So, but yeah, that was just another story of kind of building on these projects, right? You learn what you learn. Like, I learned a lot from working for this to apply to the next one, you know? So yeah, that's another experience there.
Well, yeah, and I'd imagine, like, in this kind of business, really getting your first couple of clients is a big deal, because that gives you a bit of a confidence boost and potentially a momentum boost. You know, there might be referrals that come through that. So that's really important to just get those first couple of clients. Then you know it's something that's workable.
Right. Yeah, you're going to learn so much. Yeah, in any capacity, taking risks is like, right, that's just part of it, is you're going to be humbled, but you could experience things that are really, really rewarding, of course. So, and I know when we talked, I was really inspired to hear about a little bit of your story of, like, I remember you said that for a long time you found it difficult to meet people, correct? And you made it a goal to just go out and talk to people regularly. Is that kind of how that story went?
Yeah. I was wanting to work my way out of my shell, and I got into network marketing in 2011, and I kind of used that as a catalyst to start getting into conversations every day. And that's
brilliant. And now you're like a really great interviewer. That's crazy.
Well, thank you for saying that.
That's so crazy.
I think I am too.
No, that is the human spirit, right? That is like perseverance and like seeing, you know, a bit of a flaw, right? Or not a flaw, but just a weakness, and saying like, I gotta work at this. And it was probably so hard for you, man. Like that crosses over into everything, right? Life and music and the business. That's so cool.
Oh yeah. Like, I don't necessarily think about it now, but I'm sure if I looked back, I could see that it was a challenge. And part of the challenge too was just going into environments where were unfamiliar to me. You know, maybe I was comfortable stepping into a Subway, but not comfortable stepping into an Applebee's, whatever it was. Like, I just went in anyway. And so
it's pretty. Yeah, I don't know if you can cuss on your show, so I'm not going to cuss. Anyways, but I really love meeting people, and I'm pretty extremely extroverted. So, but with that said, it's still nerve-wracking, especially when you're putting your art out there to bring it back to the music side. Yeah. In my experience, over the last year of trying to play out as much as possible of playing my original music out, was that I had a wake up call on how incredibly difficult it was going to be to get booked.
Mm.
So you know this better than I, but I would say in my experience, it has been like a 30-to-1 ratio of
Wow.
emails. And because like I don't have like a professional electronic booking tape, like I have like fairly reasonable iPhone videos of me playing, and then I have to go by word of mouth. So what I did was there was this spot in Santa Barbara that I really wanted to play. Really cool, low-key brewery that compensated, but also was very intentional on getting up-and-coming independent artists playing there. And I was like, this is the place I gotta get into. So I worked hard playing on these like little venues in the area and getting some footage, and emailed the booking agent there. Of course, they didn't get back to me. Followed up, they didn't get back to me, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go there and just yell wildly, "Show me the gatekeeper!" No, I didn't. I wasn't crazy about it, but I did just go to the brewery and say, like, you know, who's in charge of booking here? Can I speak with them? I wanted to follow up. And the person was just really busy, right? And I was really nervous because I didn't want to be like overbearing, you know, and then be like, this is kind of awkward. We don't want you here. We don't like your music. But they were so sweet. And, you know, I was booked out like a month after that, and I played that spot twice, and each time was the most fun, best gigs that I've played to this point. And got to play with some great artists that really wanted to play there too. And the reason it was specific too is because although it's, you know, it's just a brewery, they're very focused on the arts. They have an art gallery that's literally right next to the tap room area, the bar. And the music is very specific on where it's set up, so the bar can either kind of just like have it in the background or be right there in the foreground. So anyways, that was definitely my story of being like, I guess I have to like seriously put myself out there in new ways that are actually quite difficult. Yeah.
We've got breweries like that too that are pretty arts focused and open minded as far as what sort of entertainment they bring in. And the Indie YYC is one of my new projects that I started or co-founded basically. And we had an opportunity to take one of our events, because we sponsor 2 events right now. One is the New Beat and one is the Storytellers. The New Beat is basically sort of beat poetry inspired, but a fresh take on it, a non-depressing take on it. And we were able to bring that to a brewery. And
dude, breweries are where it's at, man, because I think I overlooked for so long that craft breweries, they are artists. Like, they are so passionate about their product, and a lot of them are passionate about music and the arts, and they want very intentional artists to play there to match the vibe they're trying to create. So I'm actually, and I love beer, so it just totally works out. That's cool though. I mean, how many projects do you do? Like, I feel like you have, when I listen to your show, I was like, wait, he was just talking about like 5 other projects he's done. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You're pretty busy. Yeah.
That's one way of framing it for sure. Well, you know, the Music Entrepreneur HQ has got the blog and the podcast, and I'm the one creating most of that content, but although I do have a transcriptionist. There's the Indie YYC. I am a staff writer at Music Industry How To, and I'm working hard on helping build that into a bigger thing right now. Whoa. And I also have Your Music Matters, which it looks like.
I actually heard about that. I listened to, I think it was a podcast episode where you explained about it. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's been an ongoing project because of a series of seminars that I've been taking. In a way, you know, it supports what I'm already doing with Your Music Entrepreneur HQ, and at the same time, it's a complementary project because it's a way to give back something to artists. So
dude,
I would
that
say
is like that's so cool. I love that because something I've tried to like really have a part of my philosophy, I guess, if you will, as I've over the last year worked really hard at this stuff is that art's purpose is its ability to connect, right? And this is something that have you listened to the Creative Pep Talk podcast?
I did a little bit, yeah.
With Andy J. Pizza.
Right.
So this is like his ongoing theme is that art's purpose is its ability to connect. Remember that. And, he has this incredible podcast with a huge listener base, and he's in the visual arts, and he's just, pretty wildly successful. So for him to share such a humble and like kind of beautiful philosophy has been really, really inspiring to me to keep a like integral rudder, if you will, to all this. Because like when it comes to it, like we can get so egotistical and in our heads that we forget, in life and in art, it's about connecting with people and doing meaningful projects like you are. So that's definitely making me all jazzed.
Very cool.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to talk about your involvement.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, so, and I'll to maybe go off on a little tangent with it. I applying that philosophy to business though is really hard. Is like because for me, and I'll just speak from my experience, because I'm the authority of my own experience. So if art and music is something for somebody to just vent, like they come home from work and they jam out a little bit and that's it, like that can seriously affect their livelihood in such a beautiful way. But if they're trying to share it with people or God forbid make a living with it, then they have to both hold in tension this artistic integrity mindset while also saying, if its purpose is to connect, I need to think about what people want and what people want to hear. And that's the reason I don't play certain spots, because they're going to be pissed if I don't do a cover of Wagon Wheel and I play my quirky stuff for an hour, right?
Oh my God.
But it's because of my respect for the people there. Like I could probably get a little bit more gigs, but I know that I won't deliver that well, and that would crash and burn, as opposed to this brewery that I was talking about where they were like, that was really cool. What you provided us was really cool. And so I've been trying to think about that a lot. And now I paint and draw a lot, actually.
Very cool.
But the beautiful thing with that is I give 0 Fs. Can I say that? I give 0 Fs if people are affected by my paintings and drawings. It is really, I'm just throwing paint. I have no technical skill with it. I think they all look cool, and that's it. But with my music, I can't stand behind the concept of subjectivity and say, well, if this little venue, or if you didn't like my music, he just subjectively sees it differently. There is a bit of an objectivity that I need to provide something that is fitting, right? So, that's just a complex little tangent on an artistic perspective, right?
Well, totally get that. And I think it is great to have something in your life where you're creatively free. If it's not your music, hopefully it's something else you do, just like you do with your art. For me, like I get to write, and that's a little more where the cash is made. But the music side is where I've chosen, and I always get to be free. And I tend to write from a relatively pop mindset to begin with, because I really love a melody, but I also like intricacies in forming that too. So it's not just like put a beat on and sing to it. But even some of the track, like I have nothing against covers at all. Some of the tracks that I've been working on in my spare time lately are covers of some of my favorite songs.
Oh man. I mean, the gigs I've played recently, they're 50-50 for the most part, original and covers. So I'll do a Hendrix song all day. I'm all about it, but that's very intentional, And I was going to say too, on the original music side, so this year I plan on releasing original music, and it is certain. I totally agree with you that I really try to approach it with a lot of freedom, and I get my inspiration from independent artists that when I hear them, I'm like, that sounds absolutely vulnerably who they are. Like, have you heard of Courtney Barnett or Mac DeMarco or even guys like Father John Misty? When I hear these independent artists of today, I'm like, I don't hear any fluff, but I also hear music that that they're thinking about their audience. They're thinking about people that enjoy, like you said, a simple melody. But at the same time, they're achieving, creating art that sounds really quite almost, revolutionary. I don't know. Not revolutionary, but pretty amazing,
Exactly. I think it just speaks to the fact that like you can sort of do it without compromise, because everybody is worried about selling out, right? And the reality is you can still be very expressive in how you want to be expressive while still being commercial. It's possible.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Have you ever been around people that really don't care about selling out though? It's incredible.
Well, yeah, because you're free, right? You're free to create more in the ways that you want to create.
And actually, I'm using his example for somebody that holds this balance really well. I've been working with this pop artist for the last year, a good friend of mine, Jamal Anthony, and we grew up actually in the same hometown, and he ended up in LA. And I think he achieves this balance so well. He is totally functioning in the pop world. He writes songs for guys like, and this isn't to name drop, this is just what he's doing, like Grayson Chance and everything. He just wrote one of his singles. But it's totally who he is. He is having a ball. And it has been so fun to like play gigs with him or for him and just be around this guy that's like totally doing pop stuff and is like, this is genuinely who he is. Like there's no element of selling out. Like he is just being Jamal Anthony, which is cool to be around. And I like a lot of the music too, man. Like it's kind of R&B and pop and all that. I can get into it. So yeah. There's always a balance with it, but it's achievable.
Absolutely, yeah. For some people, it's just how they write and who they are. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I guess to kind of offer a final thought, it's not just what you know, but who you know. That counts. It doesn't mean you have to know everybody on this planet to succeed at a level that you want to succeed. And I don't either. I just happen to know enough people that they book shows for the band that I play in, or they give me references for solo shows that I could potentially play, to where I never have to book my own gigs. And in fact, when I try to book my own gigs, usually it goes very badly. So
yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah, exactly. I used to do the booking, but yeah, it's been years. I got enough gigs from other people's recommendations that I don't know.
Good for you, man. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, man, too. And it's going to be cool to cue in Brian Young outro.
Exactly. Absolutely. So yeah, we'll talk again soon.
All right, David Andrew, we appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Music in this episode was brought to you by Brian Young. Wherever you're listening to this right now, please consider leaving a 5-star review and comment to help us get the word out about the podcast.